All right, so it's a game that I've been trying to get a ruling on. We couldn't find the ruling.
Okay.
So what happened was my buddy played it to Fairy's Protection.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, it protects from everything. And then he attacked a guy. The guy that he attacked tapped a land and used a land ability to block his creature.
So I'm
Can he
sorry.
do that?
So I'm sorry. You're saying the player that played Teferi's Protection has now attacked somebody else?
Yes, they attacked the other player. Player
So
2, the person he's attacking, tapped a land ability and blocked it because land doesn't have a mana color. He said that he could use the ability on the land to block the attacking creatures, but Teferi's Protection says he has protection from everything.
well, now here's a couple things. First off, it doesn't sound like that situation shouldn't have played out that way because Teferi's Protection not only gives the caster protection from everything, but phases out all of their permanents. Are you familiar with what phasing does?
Okay, then it wasn't Teferi's Protection. It was the one that. It was the other one that gives you protection from everything.
Okay.
I thought it was Teferi's Protection. It was one of the ones that gave you protection from all colors and everything.
Right, but it gives specifically the player protection from all the colors and all the stuff, right?
No, it was the player and his creatures.
Okay. So, was it like Akroma's Will?
Yeah, that's what it was. Akroma's Will.
Okay, hang on. No, yeah, that's fine. All right, let's. Yeah, so they had their commanders, so they got all the modes, or not?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they had their commander, they had all the modes, and then they wanted to attack.
So their creatures
guy.
got flying, vigilance, double strike,
Right,
and also lifelink, indestructible, and protection from all colors until end of turn. Yeah. So the person that had the land, it would depend on the ability itself because so for example, the name of the land is escaping me right now. But basically, like if it just said that, activate the ability, this land becomes a 1/1 creature, with flying or whatever, right? Then if the ability did not specifically give it a color, lands by default are colorless permanents. So it would remain a colorless permanent and would be the exception to protection from all colors. The same way that if your creatures had protection from all colors, I could block it with the sad robot, the oh my goodness, all these names are escaping me today. But you know what I'm saying? Like any artifact creature that's colorless, right? I could block your creatures with protection from all colors. So if the land remained colorless, then it would be able to block. Now, if it was one of the lands, I know like there's a couple of them from like the Forgotten Realms sets and stuff like that like turn themselves into a creature with a color. Like it says this becomes a red ogre or whatever, right? Like if it gives itself a color, now it is included in that protection from all colors, so it wouldn't be able to block.
Well, the land from what I remember, it had a color and then +3 or +4, and it said tap it and then block target commander or target creature.
It said like target creature becomes blocked.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Let me see if I can find the card because I need to see the wording on this. Hang on, let me do a quick.
Because the land itself didn't turn into a creature.
Oh.
But the land itself, you paid. I think it was like white and then like 2 colorless or something like that. Tapped it and it said block target creature.
All right, let me see.
Target creature becomes blocked. Like it didn't turn itself into a creature, but it just said target creature can't block or target creature is tapped or something like that.
Okay, hang on. Now there's things like
But because he had that, was it Akroma's Will or whatever?
Right.
Could he still do that even though what we ended up doing was just rolling a dice and just whoever picked even or odd won. But
right. So
we didn't know because lands are colorless.
Yeah. So if it wasn't turning itself into a creature, then it doesn't matter now about if it didn't give itself a color. But the ability
on the mana was colored.
Correct, right. Even though the ability requires a payment of a specific color of mana, that does not give that card, that object, those colors. What you're thinking of now is commander color identity. involves the pips that show up in abilities and things like that. But the actual object itself doesn't gain those colors that are in its ability. So lands by default are colorless, right?
Okay.
Yeah, like if I have a land that's just a land, but it has an ability that says like, tap it and pay a green mana to do a thing. That doesn't make it a green source. That doesn't make it a green object, right? It is still colorless. Right. I just have to have green mana to activate it. Okay. Yeah, it's no more than if I were playing Sisay Weatherlight Captain, which is a white legendary creature, and in her text box has all 5 colors for her ability. You need all 5 mana colors to activate the ability. She is not a 5-color creature on the battlefield or anything like that. It's a 5-color commander, but it's still just a white creature, a white spell, a white permanent. So the ability, having the mana pips in the text box, only matters for like commander color identity. But it doesn't actually give it those colors for anything that would say like destroy all blue permanents or stuff like that, right? Like that wouldn't matter. It's still colorless. So in that situation, they could still, with that colorless land, even though they had to pay colored mana to do it, target the creature with protection from all colors. Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, we were kind of on the fence. We were like, well, the land itself is colorless, but the ability is colored. Right. And he has protection from colors, so we didn't know where that rolled.
Yeah, like same. So like a more recent thing that might become relevant is the earthbending mechanic from the new Avatar cards. Right? If you earthbend a land into a creature, earthbending doesn't give it a color, and that land by default is colorless, so it is a colorless creature now.
Oh.
Even if it has abilities on it that require mana pips of different colors, or even if it can produce all 5 colors, that doesn't matter. It is a colorless permanent. So until an effect specifically gives it a color, it is not. It's not any of the 5 main colors.
Okay.
Yep.
And if something that has protection from all colors, like a colorless creature, like an artifact, wouldn't be affected, right?
Correct. You would be able to block with that creature. Yep.
Okay.
Solemn Simulacrum. That's the card. I couldn't think of the sad robot earlier. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
So I'm building Ozai from Avatar.
Okay. Which one?
Phoenix King.
Okay.
And I want to put a card called Thran Turbine into the deck. But I don't. So Thran Turbine is beginning of your upkeep. You can add up to 2 colorless. This mana cannot be used to cast spells.
Okay. So was it Thran what now?
Turbine.
All right. Let's see. During your upkeep, you may add up to 2. Okay. Mana pool. This mana cannot be used to play spells. Okay. And then Phoenix King is the one that if you would lose unspent mana, it becomes red.
It becomes red.
Gotcha. Uh-huh.
I'm curious if the 2 colorless would still not be 2 colorless that turns into red. If I could use that to cast spells then.
Gotcha. So so the mana that becomes red because of Ozai is still the exact same mana it was. It just changed characteristics basically. So if it had any restrictions on it, that restriction still carries. If it had any bonuses to it, that bonus still carries, right? Like for example, there's a Galanra, one of the partner commanders, that it's a mana dork, and it says it taps for green mana, and if you use this mana to cast a spell with mana value 6 or greater, you draw a card. If I were to tap that for green mana, not use it, and Ozai turns it red, and then like another turn I tap it and I don't use it and Ozai turns it red, and then later on I use both of those manas that were turned red but were from Galanra that had that ability to draw a card if it was cast something 6 or greater, and I use those to cast something mana value 6 or greater, I still get that draw card for each of them.
Okay.
Right? Because that's a benefit riding with that mana, same as this artifact here has that restriction riding with that mana.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if that mana goes away and then I just get 2 red.
No, because that's what it says. It says it becomes red.
Okay.
Right? So it's the same thing as saying, like, I have this creature on the battlefield and it becomes something else. It's still the same creature. right? Like it didn't change, it didn't like leave and I'm getting something fresh, right? The difference would be something like doubling cube, right? You know what doubling
Yep,
cube does?
I got that in here.
Yeah, doubling cube is its own source of mana. So let's say for example now you have 2 mana in your mana pool put there by Thran Turbine, right? That mana has a
Uh-huh.
restriction. And then you use doubling cube to double the amount of mana that you have, and you still have that Thran Turbine mana in your mana pool.
Uh-huh.
The doubling cube will see that and add, colorless mana, or if it's red at the time, red mana. But because doubling cube is the source of this mana, it's not changing the mana you already have. It's adding its own source of mana. So that mana you're making with doubling cube doesn't have the restriction anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like there's non-commander formats that run Jeweled Lotus. The artifact you get
Yeah,
3
how does that
mana.
work?
You get 3 mana that you can only use on your commander, and they'll use
Uh-huh.
that with doubling cube to get basically 3 mana that they don't have to use on a commander.
I thought Joe Lotus was only legal in Commander before it got banned.
Oh no.
You'd think.
You would think and that's why they didn't bother banning it, because like, well, why would people put it in any other format, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's I forget what format it is. I can look it up, but yeah.
Probably
But
like Modern or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah, it's one of the eternal formats, of course. But that was a trick that they were doing, is they were using Jeweled Lotus, and I think they were like recurring it or doing some shenanigans with it, and building up this massive mana pool. And then, but they can only use it to cast a commander. That's fine. Doubling cube. Oh look, I have 15 mana that I can only use on commanders. Well, now I have 15 mana I can only use on commanders, and 15 mana I can use however I want.
Yeah. Another question. I think I already know the answer, but the card, I believe it's called Yurlock or something like that. It's essentially has mana burn in it.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah.
Mana burn would not affect me, correct?
Right, because mana burn happens
When you lose it.
as mana empties from the mana pool at the end of each step or phase.
Yep.
But
And
because
Ozai's
it's
preventing me from losing it.
right, and for the same reason we said, right? Ozai isn't causing the previous mana to leave and then making its own mana. It's just saying, oh, that mana just becomes red now.
Okay.
Yeah. Go for it. You said you had a question about Electrodominance?
Yeah. So does it ignore timing rules?
It ignores timing permissions but not restrictions, and I'll explain. So if an effect is giving you either instruction or permission to cast a spell, and it gives a duration, right? Like until end of turn, like the impulse draw things that say like exile the top card of your library, until end of turn you can play that card, right? Or like airbending exiles a permanent and then says, for as long as it's in exile, you can cast it by paying 2 mana. Those have to obey normal timing permission. So like a creature could only be cast during your main phase while the stack is empty, all that kind of stuff, right? Something like Electrodominance that doesn't give a duration. It doesn't say until end of turn or anything relevant like that, right? It's as you are resolving the Electrodominance, you are casting that spell right now, even if you normally don't have permission to cast it. So let's say, because Electrodominance is instant speed, let's say that somebody's attacking you, and you go, great, I'm gonna Electrodominance this creature for, X equals 5, and then off the Electrodominance, I'm gonna get this 5-cost creature onto the battlefield, right? And even if that creature doesn't have flash, that is something you are allowed to do. Now, the reason I say earlier is that in that aspect, it ignores timing permissions. So you could cast like creatures and sorceries and things like that at various times of the turn or even on opponents' turns. But if there are any restrictions in place, you cannot ignore restrictions. So for example, if you have a spell in your hand that says it can only be cast during combat, and you want to try to Electrodominance during an opponent's turn during their second main phase or something and try to cast this other spell, but it says it can only be cast during combat, you can't do that. Right? You have to be in combat to do that. Or if there's other restrictions, like somebody has a Teferi in play that says their opponents are restricted to casting at sorcery speed, right? You would not be able to cast anything off of Electrodominance because the stack would not be empty. so you couldn't cast anything else as you resolve Electrodominance, even if you cast Electrodominance during like you could a sorcery, because Electrodominance would still be on the stack when it's trying to tell you to cast something else, so you wouldn't be able to. So if there are specific restrictions in play, the casting from Electrodominance does not ignore restrictions, but it does allow you to bypass normal permissions. Yes.
So, like, I have a Lion's Eye Diamond.
Aha.
Yeah.
So Lion's Eye Diamond, while it is a mana ability, it specifically says you can only activate it any time that you could cast an instant. And in order to cast an instant, you have to get priority. Nobody gets priority at any time during this process.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, that's like its own little safeguard, so that you can't cast the one spell in your hand with Lion's Eye Diamond and then activate
And
Lion's Eye
use it
Diamond.
like a Black Lotus.
Right.
Okay. All right.
And the thing is, with Lion's Eye Diamond being a mana ability that doesn't use the stack and can't be responded to, you can't activate Lion's Eye Diamond and then cast the spell that was in your hand if it was the only card before you would have to discard it.
I see. So, can you explain how... Oh, shoot, I lost the card. Like a redirect is able to make a counter spell target itself.
Yeah. So the thing is, the redirect, or all of those spells that say change the target of target spell or ability to another target, right? This is another thing that a lot of players shortcut, and most of the time it doesn't matter, but sometimes it really does. So what happens is, the very last thing, so once you start resolving a spell, right, so it's on the stack, everybody's passed priority without taking any actions. We are now at the point that we are going to resolve this spell, right? We're going to resolve your redirect or whatever. And you've targeted the counter spell that's on the stack, right? You cannot change the target of counter spell to itself, right? Because that is an illegal target. If you're changing a target, it still has to be to a legal thing that thing could target, right? So like if you have a spell that says, destroy target creature an opponent controls, I can't redirect it to a creature you control because that's not a legal target, right? Right. Same thing, counter spells can't target themselves on the stack. But what happens is, once a spell or ability begins to resolve, it doesn't immediately leave the stack until everything that it's going to do has completed. So, for example, you mentioned Rampant Growth earlier. If a lot of players, they cast a Rampant Growth, and if it goes to resolve, they immediately throw the card into the graveyard before they search for their land. That's fine most of the time, but technically speaking, they are getting the land, putting it into play, shuffling their library, and then the card leaves the stack and goes to the graveyard. Right. Now, if somebody in a tournament were to do that and shortcut putting the Rampant Growth in the graveyard, no judge is going to penalize them, in that instance, because whatever, right? That's a negligible shortcut for time, sure. But in this instance, so what's happening is, I cast a counterspell, you put redirect on the stack, everybody passes priority, and it begins to resolve. As it is resolving, redirect is still on the stack. So as we do the effects, you say, I'm going to change the target of that counterspell to redirect, because redirect is still on the stack and is a legal target in that moment. So then, once it's finished changing that target, redirect leaves the stack, because once it's finished resolving, right? Then we go to resolve the counterspell, everyone passes priority, and the counterspell tries to resolve, except now it has no legal target, because the target that it was changed to has left the stack, so it just fizzles to no effect.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah, and that little detail of like when things leave the stack, it seems like a little nitpick, but an example that I use commonly when I'm explaining to people kind of like the nuance of things that happen in this game and how most of the time players shortcut stuff, and a lot of times it doesn't matter, but occasionally it very much matters, is and I ask him this question, and it's not like a gotcha moment, but it's just to demonstrate the nuance, is, you're familiar with Dauthi Voidwalker, right?
Of course, yeah, I play it in the deck that I've been showing you. I play
Okay.
Kefka Court Mage.
Cool.
I play CDH.
Oh, great. So let's say, for example, now there's not a lot of board wipes in CEDH compared to more casual Magic, but
Maybe Toxic Deluge.
Sure. Okay.
Blasphemous Act.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a few, but it's not as prevalent. But this is still
Definitely
something
not.
that could come up. And I asked
A lot
people,
better to win than interact.
Sure. And I ask people, I say, well, let's say you had a Dauthi Voidwalker, so every card that I have that's supposed to go to the graveyard goes to exile instead with a void counter on it. If I cast a Rampant Growth, that card, instead of going to the graveyard, goes to exile, and you have access to that Rampant Growth as long as you have Dauthi, and they're like, yeah, okay, great. I'm like, okay, cool. So you have a Dauthi Voidwalker, and I cast a board wipe. What happens to the card of the board wipe that I have just cast? Right? Is it going to go to exile, or is it going to go to the graveyard? And
what you said earlier, it doesn't go to the graveyard until it's fully resolved and Douthi's no longer on the field.
Well, and here's the nuance. It depends on the type of board wipe. So,
Okay.
if I'm casting a board wipe that either destroys, exiles, or returns to hand, right? So like a Wrath of God, or a Farewell, or an Evacuation, right? Let's say I'm doing any of those things, right? The spell stays on the stack until it has done everything it's going to do, and like you said, Dauthi has left the battlefield and will no longer be there to apply its replacement effect to the card leaving the stack and going to the graveyard, so it goes freely. But if I'm casting a damage or a toughness-based board wipe, like you said the others, a Blasphemous Act or a Toxic Deluge, Dauthi doesn't die immediately, because it doesn't die until state-based action sees it with lethal damage or 0 toughness, which doesn't happen until after the spell has fully resolved, but before triggers go on the stack, before players get priority. So now Dauthi sits there waiting to die. The spell, as it resolves, right, it got lethal damage or 0 toughness. The spell tries to leave the stack and go to the graveyard. Dauthi is there just long enough to say, hey, go to exile. And so it goes to exile with a void counter, and then Dauthi immediately dies along with anything else. But that's important because if you have a way to recur Dauthi, or if another opponent plays their own Dauthi, they have access to that card in exile with the void counter on it.
That's definitely something new to me. That's really cool to learn. I mean, I guess I never really put the 2 and 2 together about the state-based actions.
Yeah, and that's not something that I don't. When I bring that up to people, I don't do it to ever try to like, gotcha, you didn't know this, or you should feel bad and you're whatever. No, it's just that this is a very nuanced situation that a lot of people get wrong because. So here, yeah. Oh yeah, trust me. This whole process, when I learned all of this, like, opened my eyes to so many possible things. Like that's why I try to help people with this stuff. Is not just to be like, hey, look what I know. It's like, hey, look, this has empowered me to do really dumb things to my friends, and I want to empower you to do dumb things to your friends.
I think no, that was answered. Never mind. I had a question at one point with like 2 opposition agents, but it's the last one that entered, and then of course, you wouldn't control your opponent while they're searching your library, right?
So
like if you had so your opponent casts an opposition agent,
mm-hmm.
and then you cast your opposition agent.
Right.
It's still your library, so you don't gain control back.
So you're saying, like, if you have an opposition agent and I play my opposition agent and then I rampant growth, do I just have control of myself while I search? No, because if I have an opposition agent, I only control an opponent while they are searching their library. You, with your opposition agent, are not searching my library. You're controlling me while I search my library. I am still searching. And so actually, so it's I don't know, I'm trying to think how to say this before anyway. So like, let's say, for example, you have, 4-player game, play, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And player 4 goes to search, right? So they're doing their thing, and in response, player 1 flashes in their opposition agent, and then player 2, after that resolves, flashes in their own opposition agent, right?
2 would get it.
Well, here's the thing, and this is the actual explanation of why, because this kind of messes with people. Player 4 actually gets to decide which of these opposition agent replacement effects is going to apply in the end result to the card being searched for.
Oh, I always thought it was the last
Well,
one to enter, like
well,
a like Notion Thief.
it is, but this no, not Notion. No, Notion Thief works very differently, and I'll explain that in a second. But so Opposition Agent provides two effects. One of them is a control effect of the player. The second one is a replacement effect for what happens to that card after it's been found. Okay. So as far as the replacement effect, the affected player gets to decide the order of replacement effects and effectively which one takes priority. So player 4 gets to decide, is it exiled to player 1's opposition agent or player 2's? But remember I said the first part is the control effect. The most recent one to enter has the most recent timestamp for control. So in that instance, player 2 would be controlling player 4 while they made that decision. Now, most of the time, player 2 is going to choose themselves for the purpose of that replacement effect choice. But they have the option to politic player 1 if they want, right? To say, you know, hey, look, they rampant growth. We both have our opposition agents. I can make them choose you to go get that land because you've missed some land drops, but I want this in return.
So you're saying that it would be player's 4 choice, but because player 4 is being controlled by player 2, since it has the most recent timestamp, it's really player 2 that gets to decide whose opposition agent gets it.
Correct.
That is a crazy interaction.
Yeah. Now the thing about Notion Thief, what you're thinking, Notion Thief has nothing to do with timestamps. It doesn't matter which one came in second. So, for example, let's say that you know, player 4 has already drawn for turn, and they have some other effect that's gonna, you know, they have a guardian project, they play a creature, and they're, you know, doing that, right? And then player 1 and player 2 both have a Notion Thief. Okay. Both of these want to apply to the same event, right? Neither of them are changing the fact of that is the event. Like, they're not creating a new event, they're just modifying the original event of, instead of player 4 drawing a card, something else is going to happen. But it's still the original event of player 4 drawing this card, right? Now, replacement effects, the way they work, have nothing to do with timestamps or turn order or anything like that. It's the affected player gets to decide the order of the replacement effects. So what they could say is that, well, I'm going to order it so that player 1's Notion Thief applies first, and then player 2's Notion Thief. So what happens is, player 1's Notion Thief replaces this with, instead of player 4 drawing that card, player 1 draws the card. Player 2's Notion Thief now applies and goes, well, the fact that player 1 is still drawing a card that isn't their first card drawn for the turn, it still gets to apply. So now player 2 is the one drawing the card. This doesn't re-invoke player 1's Notion Thief. That already applied to this event.
Gotcha.
So player 2, but that's because player 4 chose the order. So but it has nothing to do with timestamps or layers or, you know, priority or turn order. It's the affected player got to choose.
Wow.
Like,
so it doesn't cause a draw.
No.
It doesn't involve timestamps. It's still affected player.
Uh-huh. So, and here's the thing about replacement effects is applying a replacement effect can change how or if other replacement effects apply. So, let's say, for example, that players 1 and 2 both have a Notion Thief in play. Okay? Player 1's turn, and they've already drawn their card for turn, and they have an effect that's going to make them draw a card. Right? So, this event of drawing a card, player 1's Notion Thief does not apply to this because it's their own card being drawn. They're not replacing that, right? But player 2's Notion Thief does. So it applies to this event of drawing a card and says, actually, instead of you, I'm going to draw a card. Well, once that replacement effect applied, player 1's Notion Thief sees that and now applies and goes, well, instead of you drawing a card, I'm going to draw the card. So because they have a Notion Thief on their own turn, drawing their own card, the way player 2's Notion Thief started to apply, causing player 1's Notion Thief to apply, they draw their own card.
Alright.
Yeah.
I think that covers all the bases of Notion Thieves and opposition agents.
It's up there. It's up there, man. I think the dumbest thing I've ever done with the replacement effect of Notion Thief and deciding who draws the card is I only did this once, and I put these cards in the deck not specifically to interact with each other, but like they do their own thing. But if they're on the battlefield at the same time, and I do this thing that I was doing, like it anyway. So I had a Notion Thief in play, and a oh my goodness, what's the Sphinx that, like, when somebody draws a card, you draw 2 cards? Consecrated Sphinx.
Consecrated
Right.
Sphinx.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I fractured identity'd my own Notion Thief to give a copy to all 3 of my opponents.
And then with the Consecrated Sphinx, you...
And then, so what happened is, so they, let's say I'm over here on 4 with the Consecrated Sphinx, and now all of my opponents have a Notion Thief, right? So when one of them went to draw a card, I triggered to draw 2 cards, right? And with those draws, like I said, with the replacement effects, I effectively decide who gets to draw it. So I'm like, cool, player 1, you're gonna draw cards instead. Oh, you drew cards. Cool. I draw cards. Hey, player 1, you're gonna draw cards instead. Hey, and then what happens is, because I'm drawing 2 at a time, I can each draw, I can choose the replacement effect. So the one that would kill player 1, I can go, actually, on that one, one of the cards that I'm drawing, you're gonna draw that one, and player 2 is gonna draw the other one. And so then I can start with them, and then I go with the, it just draws everyone out. It's a convoluted, like, it's not something you build to do specifically.
Right.
But
it's funny.
If the moment arises, I will not turn that away. Yeah.